From above, Sweden looks like a country with nothing to hide. Clean streets, quiet lakes, red houses under the snow, cities surrounded by water, forests, and silence. To the world, it looks calm, safe, almost perfect. But beneath that peaceful surface, Sweden built something most people never imagine. Under rocks, islands, ordinary buildings, and frozen landscapes, there is another Sweden, made of tunnels, shelters, fortified spaces, and hidden military structures. A country that looks like paradise from above, but prepared part of its survival underground. And that raises one uncomfortable question. Why would one of Europe's calmest countries need a hidden world beneath its feet? This is not the Sweden shown on postcards. This is the Sweden beneath the rocks. The Sweden hidden below quiet coastlines, ordinary streets, and peaceful forests. A country that learned a powerful lesson. Peace is precious, but it should never be taken for granted. That is the secret hidden inside Sweden's perfect image. The calm is real, but it was not built by accident. The silence is real, but it does not mean the country was unprepared. And the beauty on the surface hides something deeper than most people imagine. This is the story of a country that looks like paradise from above, but built part of its future beneath the ground. And before this descent begins, take a moment to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Stay with the channel, because the world is full of countries that look simple from far away until someone looks closer. Now, the question is simple. What did Sweden build beneath the rocks? And why would one of Europe's calmest countries hide so much below its feet? At first, nothing about Sweden seems threatening. A traveler arriving there may notice the silence before anything else. Streets feel measured. Trains arrive with quiet precision. Houses are painted in warm colors, even under cold skies. Forest trails look open and peaceful. Lakes sit still between dark trees, as if the entire country learned how to breathe slowly. This is the Sweden shown in postcards, a place where nature feels close, cities feel organized, and life seems protected by invisible rules. But that is exactly what makes the story more interesting. Because countries are not only shaped by what they show, they are also shaped by what they prepare for. And Sweden, behind its calm face, has a long memory. It knows what geography means. It knows that the Baltic Sea is not just beautiful water. It knows that being in Northern Europe means watching, listening, and preparing. It knows that peace can last for decades, but only if a country takes the future seriously. So while the world saw Sweden as gentle and neutral, Sweden quietly looked at maps, coastlines, islands, ports, skies, and possible crises. It did not need to shout, it planned. That is the first crack in the perfect surface. The peaceful image is not fake. Sweden truly is beautiful. It truly is organized. It truly does carry a sense of calm that many countries admire, but under that calm there is a colder, more strategic layer. A country does not build underground bases because it is careless. It does not create shelters for millions because it never thinks about danger. It does not carve defense into rock because it believes the world will always stay kind. The paradise above was real, but it was standing on top of a country that had prepared for something far darker. And to understand that preparation, the story has to move away from the streets and toward the stone. Sweden's secret is not that it was afraid. Every country has fears. The secret is that Sweden turned fear into systems. Instead of building its identity around panic, it built around preparation. Instead of making every threat visible on the surface, it hid strength inside procedures, civil defense, underground spaces, and hard rock. For decades, Sweden stood in a delicate position. It was not the loudest power in Europe. It was not trying to dominate the continent, but it was close enough to the tensions of the Cold War to understand that distance was not protection by itself. To the east, the Baltic region carried enormous strategic weight. To the west, alliances and military blocs shaped the continent. Around Sweden, the world was dividing itself into sides, routes, fears, and calculations. So Sweden made a choice. It would look calm, but it would not be careless. That choice changed how the country thought about defense. It was not only about soldiers. It was not only about weapons. It was about roads, ports, tunnels, shelters, communications, food, energy, hospitals, ordinary citizens, and the ability to keep functioning when life stopped being ordinary. This is why the title matters. Sweden looks perfect, until someone asks what supports that perfection. Because underneath the peaceful surface there was a serious question. If something went wrong, where would people go? Where would the Navy operate from? Where would important systems be protected? How could the country survive without falling into confusion? The answer was not always visible. Sometimes it was hidden behind plain doors, sometimes under apartment buildings, sometimes inside the rocks, and sometimes behind a coastline so calm that no one would imagine a fortress waiting underneath it. The next part of the story is where the promise of the thumbnail becomes real. Sweden did not only prepare in documents, it carved preparation into the earth. Neutrality can look soft from a distance. It can look like silence, like refusal, like staying away from danger. But for Sweden, neutrality never meant blindness. It meant staying alert without making unnecessary noise. It meant knowing that a country can avoid conflict and still prepare for the possibility that conflict may one day come near its borders. That is why the Swedish landscape carries a strange contrast. Above ground, the country can feel peaceful, open, and even gentle. But its geography is also made of hard coastlines, islands, forests, narrow waterways, and rock. Lots of rock. And rock, in the mind of defense planners, is not just landscape. Rock can become cover. Rock can become protection. Rock can become a shield. Imagine a quiet Swedish island, water surrounding it, trees moving in the cold wind, a small road disappearing between stones and forest. From far away, nothing looks unusual. There is no dramatic skyline, no obvious warning, no giant sign telling the world to look closer. But hidden inside that kind of landscape, Sweden saw something else. It saw a place where ships could be protected. It saw a place where tunnels could be carved. It saw a place where a base could survive not by being huge on the surface, but by being buried inside the stone. This is the moment where the story begins to turn. The perfect Sweden of postcards does not disappear. It stays there. The lakes remain beautiful. The villages remain quiet. The forests remain calm. But now the viewer understands something new. The beauty was not the whole picture, because somewhere under that calm surface, Sweden was building with a completely different emotion. Not comfort, not decoration, preparedness. And that preparedness would produce one of the most cinematic secrets in Europe, a naval base hidden inside solid rock. South of Stockholm on the island of Musko, the story enters the ground. At the surface, the area does not scream for attention. There is water, rock, forest, and the cold northern atmosphere that makes Sweden feel so still. But beneath that landscape, the country created something extraordinary. A naval base built inside the rock. Not just a bunker, not just a storage room. A real underground naval installation, with tunnels, docks, and protected spaces designed to keep parts of Sweden's maritime defense hidden and shielded. The image feels almost unreal. A dark entrance, heavy doors, long passages disappearing into stone, industrial lights reflecting on water, cavern walls rising above underground docks, a place where ships and submarines could be protected not by distance, but by the mountain itself. This is the visual heart of the story. The thumbnail is not only metaphor. Sweden really did build a world beneath the ground. And when the viewer sees that, the country changes shape in the mind. The calm villages above are no longer just calm. The rocks are no longer just rocks. The coastline is no longer only beautiful. Suddenly the landscape feels layered. The surface becomes a cover. The quiet becomes strategy. This is why Musko matters so much to the story. It gives the hidden world a real body. It makes the secret visible. A country that many people imagine as peaceful, polite, and almost soft, had also built a fortress-like naval space inside the earth. That contrast is powerful because it does not destroy Sweden's image. It deepens it. Sweden was peaceful, yes, but it was not naive. It understood that a country can love calm and still prepare for danger. It can value neutrality and still build defenses. It can look open from above and still protect what matters below. And Moscow was only the most dramatic sign of something larger. Inside the imagination, Moscow feels like a scene from a spy thriller. But the power of this story is that the idea is real. Picture the camera moving from the Swedish coast toward a rock face. At first, there is only stone and water. Then the view shifts. A hidden entrance appears. The camera goes inside. The sound changes. Wind disappears. Footsteps echo. The light becomes artificial. The walls are no longer trees and sky, but stone, metal, concrete, and shadow. The viewer is no longer looking at Sweden the paradise. The viewer is looking at Sweden the survivor. That is the emotional turn. A country often associated with comfort, welfare, design, music, technology, and clean public life, also created places meant for moments when comfort would no longer be enough. The underground base shows a hard truth. Peaceful countries still need plans. Beautiful countries still need protection. Calm countries still think about worst-case scenarios. And that is what makes the story stronger than a simple secret-based documentary. The base is impressive, but it is not only impressive because it is large or hidden. It is impressive because of what it reveals about the Swedish mind. Sweden did not prepare loudly. It prepared deeply. It used the land itself as part of its defense. The rock became a wall. The island became a cover. The underground became a shield. And above it all, life could continue. People could see quiet water, clean streets, and peaceful forests, never fully realizing what the same country had built under its own landscape. But the most unsettling part is not that one hidden base exists. It is that the same logic of preparation did not stop at military spaces. It moved into civilian life. The hidden world was not only for ships, it was also for people. In Sweden, the hidden world is not always dramatic. Sometimes it does not look like a massive door carved into a mountain. Sometimes it looks like an ordinary building, a parking garage, a basement, a plain entrance, a small sign most people pass without thinking. That is where the story becomes more personal, because if Moscow is the spectacular secret, civil defense shelters are the everyday secret. They bring the idea of what lies beneath out of the military world and into normal streets. A person could walk past a building in a Swedish city and see nothing special. Windows, walls, doors, people going to work, children going to school, groceries being carried home, life moving in its normal rhythm. But under that normal rhythm, some spaces were designed with another purpose. In peaceful times, they may be used for storage, parking, or daily activities. But in a crisis, they are meant to change function. They become part of a national system of protection. That is a powerful idea, because the Swedish secret is not only hidden in remote places, it can be hidden under the ordinary. The paradise above is built with trapdoors of preparation below, and this changes the way the viewer sees the country. Sweden is no longer just a beautiful postcard with snow and water. It is a layered society. One layer is daily life. Another layer is emergency planning. Another layer is the belief that a population should not be left helpless if the world changes quickly. This is not meant to create fear. It creates respect. Because the country's calm begins to look less like luck and more like discipline. Sweden does not wait for the storm to ask where the shelter is. It builds the shelter before the storm arrives. The deeper the story goes, the clearer the secret becomes. Sweden's hidden world is not only concrete, steel, and stone. It is also a mindset. A country can build shelters, but shelters alone do not create resilience. People must know that preparation matters. Institutions must take it seriously. Citizens must understand that safety is not only something delivered from above, it is something shared. That is why Sweden's idea of defense has often been broader than the image of soldiers alone. It includes society. It includes communication. It includes public responsibility. It includes ordinary people knowing that, in an emergency, calm behavior matters. This is where Sweden becomes even more interesting. The country that looks relaxed on the surface has also trained itself to think about serious questions. What happens if systems fail? What happens if supply chains are interrupted? What happens if electricity, communications, transport, or daily routines are suddenly shaken? Most people do not like thinking about those questions. Sweden built them into national life, and this is the key difference between panic and preparedness. Panic happens when danger arrives before the mind is ready. Preparedness happens when a country has already imagined the problem and created a response. That is why the peaceful surface does not contradict the hidden shelters. The two are connected. The shelters exist so the surface can remain calmer. The planning exists so fear does not have to control every moment. The hidden systems exist because Sweden understood that the best time to prepare for a crisis is before anyone wants to talk about one. So the story moves toward its final meaning. The real shock is not just that Sweden hides structures under the ground. The real shock is that the paradise above depends in part on the discipline below. And now the title becomes clear. Everyone sees Sweden as paradise, but few understand what lies beneath. By this point, the viewer has seen two Swedens. The first is the Sweden the world already knows. Beautiful, clean, calm, organized. A place of water, forests, winter light, and quiet cities. The second is the Sweden hidden underneath. A naval base inside the rock. Fortified spaces beneath the landscape. Civil defense shelters behind ordinary doors. A society trained to think ahead. But the final truth is not that Sweden is secretly dark. That would be too simple. The truth is more surprising. Sweden's hidden world exists because the country takes peace seriously. It does not treat calm as a decoration. It treats calm as something that must be protected. It does not assume that stability will continue forever by itself. It builds systems, spaces, habits, and plans to support it. That is what the title promised. Sweden looks perfect until someone sees what it hides beneath the ground. And once that hidden layer is seen, the perfection looks different. It no longer looks like a miracle. It looks like construction. The country above ground feels peaceful because the country below ground has prepared for moments when peace might be tested. This is the powerful reversal. The underground world does not destroy the paradise image. It explains part of it. The tunnels, shelters, and fortified spaces are not random secrets. They are physical signs of a national lesson. The world can change, and a country should not be surprised when it does. That is why Sweden's silence feels different now. It is not empty silence. It is the silence of a place that has already done much of its thinking in advance. And for the viewer, the image of Sweden can never be exactly the same again. The red houses still look beautiful. The forests still look calm. But now, the ground beneath them feels alive with history. At the end, the camera returns to the surface. A snowy Swedish village, a lake at dusk, warm lights and small windows, a church spire rising above red houses, the wind moving softly through pine trees. Everything looks peaceful again. But now the viewer knows what that peace is sitting on. Beneath the surface, there may be tunnels, shelters, protected spaces, and the memory of a country that learned to prepare quietly. The ground is no longer just ground. The rocks are no longer just rocks. The silence is no longer simple. It means something. And that is the final wow of the story. Sweden is not fascinating because it is perfect. No country is perfect. Sweden is fascinating because it shows how a country can look peaceful without being passive. How it can value openness while still protecting what must be protected. How it can build a beautiful surface while quietly preparing for the moments when beauty alone would not be enough. The world sees Sweden as paradise, but beneath that paradise is a lesson carved into stone. A calm country may not be calm because nothing bad can happen there. It may be calm because long before danger arrived, someone asked the hard questions. Where will people go? What must be protected? How does a country keep standing when the world becomes unstable? Sweden's answer was not only written in policies or speeches. Part of it was built underground. That is why the story ends where it began, with a perfect-looking country and a hidden world underneath. From above, Sweden looks peaceful, clean, and almost untouched. But the real story begins beneath the ground. And once someone sees what Sweden hides under the rocks, the calm surface never looks the same again.